If I could start it all over again, I'd do it differently. But I'd still do it. Hey, it's James. I've seen this in willow trees, but did you know that there's a plant deformity that causes a lot of spindly branching, and those branches have their own spindly branches, and so on and so forth? It's called witch's broom, and I just thought that was cool. And I'm here to dork out today about dungeons and designs on Crumbling Keeps, the Dungeon Dorks. So this year, for the first time, I'm trying to do the dungeon room a day thingy. It started in 2023 where it was called Dungeon 23. And the idea is that every day you make a new room of a dungeon. And at the end of the year, you have 365 dungeon rooms. So I'm doing it this year, Dungeon 25. And because I have little to no chill, I'm also doing a hex a day. So that at the end of the year, I will have a 365 location hex map, as well as 365 dungeon rooms. After watching True Detective Season 4, I was inspired to make an ice cave dungeon. It just seemed like such a cool setting. The twisting mazes, knowing that it could collapse at any time, just inherently unsafe. It seemed like it'd be a really cool place to set a dungeon. There are some challenges. Unlike a lot of traditional dungeons, it's not just left or right, north or south, east or west. It also goes up and down just as much, and tunnels shoot out at all kinds of odd angles. So it's a little harder to map than the standard dungeon, and I can't really explain how I started to go about that without visual aids, and podcasts aren't the best for visual aids. But I will throw a picture in the show notes without any explanation. I also wanted time and weather tracking, as some events triggered during different times of the day or even based on different atmospheric happenings. Obviously, when this world's version of the Northern Lights shows, things get a little wacky, right? And so I wanted hexes and dungeon rooms even to be dynamic. And when those things are happening, different things can be happening there. Like imagine a portal that only opens when the northern lights are in the sky. It would give players a reason to wait for that and also hurry back to that location to seize a chance that they wouldn't have at other times. In any case, at the time of this recording, it's March. And so I am 2 months in, 2 months and a few days. And there are things I would change if I did it all over again. So if anyone's ever thinking of making a mega dungeon or doing this kind of challenge, consider this advice, or at least lamentations of what I didn't know. First, I would have more factions. I sat down before I ever made my first dungeon room back in December, and I did some planning. And I thought up some factions that would be both above ground and in the dungeon, because I knew that would be important for how they came together. And they were not enough. However many you think might be enough, it's not. You can create more. They are the important drama drivers of the whole campaign and many campaigns. Different groups and different beings want different things, and those things come into conflict. But it also gives you flavoring for different places in the dungeon and different places above ground. It is controlled, finger quotes, by this faction. It gives you an idea of what might be there. Which leads me into my next big change I would make. When I started this, I thought of it as a mega dungeon of 365 rooms. And I wish I thought about it slightly differently. And instead, thinking about it as 12 mini dungeons connected into one big one. Now, noted, mini is kind of subjective here, as if it's 12 mini dungeons, one a month, that means each one has about 30 rooms, which is a decent sized dungeon in and of itself. But by thinking about it as 12 mini dungeons, and even above ground, 12 different regions, you can give each one a specific type of flavor. And then, as you're like 3 months in, you don't feel like you're beating the original premise to death. Absolutely connect them together with some overarching ideas, but you can give them their own space and their own feel to it. And so for myself, what I ended up doing, which I did not set out to do originally, as I decided to tie each month also to some character levels. Like thinking about it like a big campaign in which players will start off at level 1, and with as many locations as there are, probably get to the top level they can. So I've been writing this for Shadow Dark, which goes from levels 1 to 10. So with 12 months, that means I can pretty much do one level per month with some other things left over. And so what do I mean by levels? I guess when I think about encounters and the type of things the players might find in any region or group of rooms above or below ground, I would think, well, what would be appropriate for a first level player, a second level character, a third level character, etc. And so for each one, some of the encounters you want to be easier. Just they can blow through them. They all don't have to be super challenging. Some you want normal, and perhaps some you want to be even too hard for them to be able to deal with. They can run away or come back later. So it's not that you want to balance each encounter perfectly for the level, but it does give you some guidelines. And if you want to make an encounter that is too hard, it lets you know what that will look like. I would have absolutely probably done more planning back in December. If I ever do this again, I will do that. I would maybe take care of some of the bigger pieces beforehand, though I'm still not sure about that, because I think that can be maybe a bit of a barrier to entry. And worrying about the bigger pieces later means, well, I've done everything else. I'm kind of on the hook for them. I have to finish. There are some parts that are kind of daunting. The starting town, so to speak, is one of them, because that's going to drive a lot of the earlier action. And in my case, it's a starting military fort. There's going to have to be different factions in that. There's going to have to be different locations in that. Different NPCs who want different things. In a sense, quest givers, if you want to think of it that way. And there's going to have to be rumor tables, obviously. Many, many rumor tables. And as I go, I'm thinking there might be different rumor tables for different locations. So as they speak to the different indigenous peoples of this land, they will have different rumors than the occupying military force that's at the base on the coast. So as you go around, you learn more about the area around you, which may be true and may be false. But that's all going to be a lot of rumors. And I'm not exactly writing a rumor a day. I have started a separate document where I take some light notes when I create something in the game that I think, oh, there should be a rumor about this. I at least put a note about it so I can take care of it later. Now, I also know that I'm going to want some special rules for this campaign that I do not have fleshed out. There's going to be a lot of climbing, and I want that to be interesting, not just a skill checker to pass or fail. You get up there or you fall. I want it to be something a little more, like a fun mini game to engage in. And being as it's in an ice cage, in a very frozen area, I want to treat warmth as a resource as well, which I had this idea when I first started making this. And now lately, within the last month or so, I know I'm late to the party. I started playing Skyrim on survival mode, which means you can get cold. Warmth is a resource in that game. I thought I was being real original. I was not, but it has been fun trying to figure out how to port that kind of thing over to a pen and paper RPG. And being as it's Shadow Dark and you have every hour when you're crawling underground, you use a torch. I figured on that same hour, you can make checks based on how much warmth you have left, etc. But I don't have that altogether fleshed out yet. And I'll do it after the fact, but that means I'm going to have to go back into different rooms and different areas and put those rules into there. Some places are obviously going to be colder than others. And so it's not the world's biggest deal, but if I had them beforehand, I wouldn't have to go back and integrate them then. So it's still fun, and I've learned a lot. I've never tried to make a dungeon this big before, either for publication or just personal play, and I'm really enjoying it. And I think if I ever do it again, it'll be better than this one. I'm still really excited about the one I'm doing, and I think it's going to be great when it's done. I look forward to when we get to playtest, and I imagine in about 2 months or so, if I can manage to make the starting camp, that is, I'll probably start that process. I'm not as on it as I was when I started. I do skip days here and there, and then have days where I catch up. And I've become okay with that. I really wanted it to be a daily practice when I first started, but that's just kind of not how I operate. Though I will say I've managed to do Duolingo every day this year. Please clap. I'm proud of myself. That and the owl yells at me a lot more than the dungeon does. If you look at the image in the show notes, you'll see the Obsidian canvas I've been using to make it. Obsidian is a note-taking program, and I'm thinking about releasing the Obsidian Vault as part of the digital assets because I think it might actually be a fun way to run it as opposed to, say, like a PDF. There will be a PDF too, but I think Obsidian does things a PDF will not. And I'm sure there's other programs I could use, but knowing about Obsidian as I do, it's kind of hard for me to think about creating this dungeon in any other different way. But yeah, I would suggest doing this for folks. It has been a fun exercise. I do think it is making me better at dungeon design as a whole, as I'm already seeing things I did finger quotes wrong the first 2 months, and it's just a lot of fun. And as it goes farther along, and I get deeper and deeper into these ice caves, I can't wait to see what lays at the heart of them. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you have any questions about anything I talked about here today or on any past episodes of Dungeon Dorks, go to crumblingkeep.com/question and ask away, or just check the link in the show notes.